So, welcome to On the Fly with Jon Skipp with Gaby Wolferink this time. On the Fly has already had some amazing people over the last 8 episodes, and luckily Jon recognised he was one of them. But when he said he was going to interview himself, that would have been a bit awkward. So I said, why don't I ask you the questions and you give the answers? So welcome this time, Jon Skipp, Managing Consultant at Green Acres Recruitment. Hi, Jon. How are you?
Very good intro, Gaby. A lot more upbeat than I usually am, to be fair. So, but I appreciate you emceeing today's interview because absolutely, I didn't want to be the one that kind of sits there, reeling off just spiel to the camera and then back at myself. So, no, I appreciate you taking the time to just have a chat with me today.
So you sent me through a few questions that people wanted you to answer. So I'll just pop in with the first question, which is the question that everyone wants to know. How did you end up recruiting into social housing?
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I've been recruiting into the housing industry now for nearly 8 years, and going back, 8.5 years, I lived in Russia, in Moscow, for a couple of years, came back to the UK, looking to be in recruitment, had interviews with quite a couple of agencies. So one was for legal, one was for finance. And then I remember the person that put me, what they're called rec to rec, so they're recruitment businesses that find recruitment agents, jobs within other recruitment agencies. And they said, oh, you've got an interview with Barry Forsyth, my manager. Obviously, you've got to make a shout out to Baz, for a social housing job. I was like, well, what the hell is social housing? So went along, had a discussion about the ins and outs, what it all meant. And as opposed to not being rude to finance or IT, just sounded fascinating, completely unknown to me. I think whenever people normally hear social housing, they just think, oh, council housing, that sort of thing, rather than really understanding it as the breadth of the whole industry is. And then, one of my funny stories, I started out recruiting maintenance surveyors, and I think I'd only been in the job about 6 weeks. I had one chap working for me on a temporary basis, and I spoke to him at the end of the week, and he said, yeah, Jon, I've already been involved today with breaking into a marijuana farm with a bailiff and the police. And I'm just like, right, what have I got myself into here, type of thing. So, and then, like I say, here we find ourselves 8 years later, still working in this wacky, wonderful sector.
And so what did you come to enjoy most over those 8 years? What was your finest moment?
I think finest moment for me was making the decision to join Greenacre. Obviously, been there now, it'll be 4 years this Friday. So just gone through leaps and bounds myself. But the reason that I kind of looking into social housing is just the people, I think, is the one, because you have such a diverse, from, not just backgrounds, ethnicity, gender, but also the kind of characters that you find, some really interesting people. So, Aileen, who was kindly on a guest as our CIH president at the moment, she's really interesting with what she talks about. But then you've got other people that talk about other things, development, housing, mental health, customer service, ethnic, E&D. It's just, there's so much going on that's why it's just really interesting, as opposed to just one corridor and that's it.
Yeah, it's such a diverse sector in terms of skills and backgrounds, and that's something that a lot of people don't know about, that it's so broad, and that whatever degree or skills, there's a home for you in housing to make it really, bit. Yeah. So another question I got through, and it's impossible not to mention it, COVID-19.
Yeah.
We're going beyond COVID-19. So obviously this is a really difficult time for the sector. Repairs have been hit quite hard, face-to-face contact between customers, tenants, residents, and housing staff. But what would you say, apart from COVID or after COVID, is housing, the social housing sector's biggest challenge?
I think
from a recruitment point of view, maybe, but also wider.
Well, I see myself as a bit unique as looking outside in, even though I'm very much involved within the housing world, do lots of CIH events, wish events. For me, I think it is very much about how housing needs to modernise and bring itself kicking and screaming almost into the 21st century. We look at some housing associations are brilliant, very forward thinking, very innovative, and not just they're in their IT, but the way they engage their tenants, they engage their staff. But I think, the biggest thing that I find is businesses wanting to go on that journey to modernise themselves. A lot of them have come across some LSVT, council stock days, and have run the business very successfully, but now realising that, in a lockdown world as well, the joke I've always made is that you see businesses turning around the 2-year IT transformation project within the first few weeks of March, getting people laptops, getting people online, getting people engaged with modern technology. And I think, that's where I see is the biggest challenge that housing's going through at the moment outside of COVID. It's about bringing them into the new world.
Is there anything that COVID or the last, is it 6 months already? Yeah, 6 months. Is there anything that has affected or will affect the way you recruit for housing associations, and kind of how you would enter that discussion with the employer and then with the candidates that you've learned?
Yeah, completely. So anyone that knows me knows I'm out and about regularly before COVID, clients, meeting, coffees, beer, everything you can imagine. And
we've had a few beers.
We have, and sadly, we need to get back on that ASAP. But
you were my last beer before the lockdown.
Yeah. Wow, that was the second week of March. But no, coming back to your question around, so there was, when we started off the kind of into COVID and lockdown, there was a real resistance from the industry about interviewing virtually. A lot of people still, and obviously I understand face-to-face is the best method, of course it is, but there was a real resistance. And then as of time, we've had to educate about the benefits, how we can get involved, a lot of pre-screening, prepping the candidate as well. So candidates that maybe not very familiar in interviewing anyway, let alone doing virtually, how, little tips they can do, everything from just making sure that your software and your internet's good, nothing worse than just, seeing fuzz and 240p static buzzing at you. And then also with our clients as well, because that's, some clients were just like, no, we're going to wait. And I'm like, this isn't going away anytime soon. I think we found that now. This isn't just a 2-3 month period and then on we move. It's now 6, 7, we're talking about April next year, and recruitment's not going away. You're going to need new blood in, you're going to need to replace staff that are moving on or, getting promoted. So absolutely, there's really, and now we're starting to see, I've just gone through a process with a client about, which is all online, interviewing, setting up those virtual interviews. They're also having like a meet the team event as well. So if they're a director and they're going in to meet the team, they can have virtual brews. If you look at Microsoft Teams at the beginning of lockdown, I think you could have a maximum of 2 or 3 people on screen at once, whereas now I believe it's something like 20, 30. It's ridiculous. So technology has evolved throughout COVID as much as we have interviewing people. So I think that's where people need to embrace it and to realize that this isn't going away, sadly.
And so that's kind of the technical side of things. And thinking back of one of my interviews that I had before I got my current job, was that the housing association was really struggling with getting people in that right mindset, because we can have all the technology and Teams upping the number of faces on the screen, broadband, everything sorted, but it's kind of that mindset that they found they really needed to work on to make this work. And I'm not going to mention a new normal. Are you, as a recruiter, when you talk to housing associations and clients, are you kind of helping them come to grips with that new situation and that new approach to working, and kind of, do you ask different things from people as a skill or a mindset compared to how you would recruit, say, September last year?
Interesting question, but actually no, not really, to be fair, because we can still see each other now. I won't lie, I am sitting here in shorts and a t-shirt, of course, because obviously we pre-agreed that you've got a Star Trek t-shirt on, which is great. I think adapting to, obviously, I think if you look at it, maybe the location that you find yourselves in, obviously the reason why I'm in my man cave is it's a casual location, it's comfortable for people. Obviously, if we're having a more professional kind of conversation, then obviously that wouldn't be my background. Of course, I'll be at my desk. But yeah, I think for people, it's just making sure that, you know, and it'll go back to a conversation I had with Gemma, I think she was episode 3, and she said that people actually feel maybe more comfortable in their own surroundings rather than being on somebody else's turf. So there is actually could be a potential benefit. I still am a huge advocate for face-to-face. That's the best way to do things and will always be. But if people feel a bit more comfortable in their own surroundings, they've got a coffee machine, they've got their own brews, they can, you know, sit there in a shirt and their boxers almost if they need to.
Yeah, we need to show this.
Exactly. You know, you just see this part. So yeah, and then when it comes to clients as well, I just say, look, bear with people, because, you know, it's not always sometimes a smooth process. You can do all the preparation in the world. You know, even before me and you came on this morning, you know, I upgraded my laptop recently and I suddenly couldn't record a meeting for the first time ever. So I was literally there scrambling, trying to find it. So I think patience. Yeah, exactly. I think patience is the way to, I think is the best advice I'd give through this, just to take your time, be comfortable. And then, you know, again, the thing I've always said is, when you're being interviewed, you also need to interview the client. It's a two-way process here, because so many people get, oh my God, what they're going to think of me. No. You need to think, these people could be my employer for a couple of years, if not potentially for the rest of my life. Are they the right fit for me? Are they going to support me in my career growth and where I want to take myself? And if you don't get that vibe or you don't gel, then, you know, I think, you know, that's a telling sign.
Yeah, that's always my top tip when people ask me kind of, I've got an interview, what any advice?
Yeah.
And I always say it's a two-way process. You know, even if they offer you the job, you're not obliged to take it. If you didn't feel the love, if you don't feel that there's any, well, it doesn't need to be magic, but at least it needs to kind of click, it needs to work.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, don't. And obviously there's different situations. Sometimes you just, you know, there's bills to pay. That's, you know, fair enough. But if you are in a position to make it a true two-way interview, then any doubt, just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've talked about the boring stuff now. No. But who is Jon Skipp? Because you're sitting here wearing your baseball cap in your man cave with your death metal rainbow and your Star Wars and Zelda
paraphernalia. Yes.
So who are you? And maybe linking a bit back to work as well and the more serious stuff. How are you yourself? How are you Jon Skipp in doing your job? So who are you and how?
Yeah, a really interesting question. And yeah, so for me, one of the best compliments I ever got paid was about a couple of months ago now. Somebody says, you're not a typical recruiter. And I said, and it was in a positive light with a smile. And I said, well, how do you mean by that? And they said, well, you're not sitting there in a blindingly blue suit with hair, because as I said, I'm follically challenged in that department. You know, I am a huge nerd, you know, as you can see from the various things I have. I'm a huge, like, you know, quite varied music taste. Probably foremost is death metal, metalcore, kind of very, very aggressive metal music, but also I love my drum and bass. I'm a huge jazz fan, love my electronica and synthwave. And then, so I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky when I say this, but I think of myself a bit unique and I stand out type of thing. And I was having a conversation with my MD, Dan, and when I started doing this video series, it was all about perception. And kind of, he said to me, and he always positively challenges me. He says, what do you know, they call me Skippy, obviously second name, that's the nickname that I go by. He said, Skippy, what do you think when these videos go out? People that know you get it, but people that don't know you, what are they going to think? And don't get me, you're never going to please anybody on the internet. I think if you look at Twitter and LinkedIn, you're never going to have, never going to get 100% buy-in. But the reason, and I put a poll out on LinkedIn and I sought feedback after a couple of episodes, and 95% of people, if not more, said, we love the casual setting. We love the casual conversation. And I'm a huge believer in that. And I think, sometimes, don't get me wrong, it's nice to get smartened up. And I think there are occasions that absolutely call for it. But if I can sit here and, I've had conversations with chief execs who sat there in a Metallica t-shirt, I was sitting in a band t-shirt, and you just get so much more out because it gets rid of a stuffy formality to things. So yeah, Mike, that's kind of, when you say playing it back into the housing side, casual up to a point, and then, obviously smart and professional needs to take over in certain areas. But if I can have a conversation with somebody over a coffee or a brew, wearing t-shirt and shorts and a cap, there you go. And one other thing that I didn't mention is the love of my life is rugby. So that's my Worcester Warriors signed jersey from 2016. And then I'm also a huge NFL fan with Pittsburgh Steelers. So sports, music, and nerdiness are probably the three pillars of my kind of interests. And then reading as well. I'm a big history lover. So currently reading a book on Elizabethan England. So if you get a chance, read it. It's The Time Traveller's Guide to Elizabethan England by Ian Mortimer. So I recommend that highly.
Okay, well, I'm more of a sci-fi person myself, so I might just give that a miss. But any other listeners, have a go. Maybe you can post the ISBN number in the comments below.
I like sci-fi too. I've asked you for recommendations before, and you've steered me in a good directions on a few things so far. So,
but I like what you said about you can, and I think that's what I found in the housing sector as well. You can, at least more and more, you can be yourself, because it's more than just your job. And you posted that on LinkedIn, I think a few days ago, that you said that some people get annoyed with people posting more personal stuff on LinkedIn. But at the same, there's, like you said, there's boundaries, and there's certain things that there's moments for professionalism, and there's moments for a bit more casual.
Yeah.
But I think over the last 6 months, with people having meetings, interviews, looking into someone else's house, jobs have become more personal.
Yeah.
And people are allowed to be more of themselves. So why not just show that off on LinkedIn a bit? Well, because you don't just hire them from 9 to 5. There's more to them than just that.
I agree, and I think you made a comment which was brilliant, because I agree. It's called "This Is Not Facebook" on LinkedIn, and to a point, I understand, but I think COVID has really revealed the human side of all of us as professionals. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. If it's like hate speech or racial or just anything of that ilk, then LinkedIn, no platforms for it, let alone LinkedIn, but I won't subscribe to that. But if someone's telling me that they've got a new job, or they're expecting their first child, or they've lost their job, or they've lost a loved one or a close one in these times, maybe LinkedIn's the only platform for them to reach out on. So I think LinkedIn's evolving. When I was using it 10 years ago, coming out of university, to where it is now, it's a completely different platform. And I'm 32. I'm by no means a young sprog anymore. And people coming out of university, there's early professionals will see the platform and use it very differently to how we use it. So there's no right or wrong way of using it. I just think just people that just can't subscribe to someone else, just move on, type of thing. Just leave it alone. Just get over it.
Yeah, I agree with that, John.
Good, I like it. Good shout. So,
are we at our 20 minutes yet, or do you have something else to say? Do you have something to add?
Was there any other questions?
Those were the questions that we agreed on, John.
Yes. Well, I
don't want to scare you with the question that I did have in mind.
No, go on then. You can fire it at me. Go on. Yes.
I think it's a really important question.
Go for it. Hit me.
Not because I came up with it, but a bit. Okay, a bit. No, we see a lot of young people coming into the sector, a lot of people moving up the ranks and really having that passion to make social housing better and to make it more for everyone and to make it the best it can be. So what would be your top tip for any young person or anyone really wanting to move up the ranks or make a difference to really make their mark in the sector? What would be your top tip?
Yeah, and I think one thing I realised in the early days in housing is almost how incestuous this industry is. Everybody knows each other,
Yeah.
or will know somebody that knows that other person. And I talk about, so I did a little kind of bi-weekly writing series before lockdown this year about how people can step up, as I called it. And I think for me the biggest one would be network, because if you're, say, a housing officer or a income officer or a surveyor at that kind of lower officer level and looking to move up in your career, I think the way you need to do that is to stand out, but also not just be within your own organisation, but work not just regional, nationwide. That's why I recommend people get LinkedIn straight away. Get Twitter, engage in conversations, engage with people. There are numerous groups you can chat with. So there's the CIH, you're very much involved with the Yorkshire guys. There's the Northeast, Northwest, Midlands, CIH boards all over. You've got Women in Social Housing that I've had the opportunity to speak at events and visit events, especially with the guys up in the Northeast. They're lovely ladies, very passionate, very professional, know what they're doing, but put some great content on as well, whilst having a bit of fun, which is great. So I think, yeah, for me, it's about network. It's about not just knowing people in your business, knowing people further afield. Me and you met at a Rounders event for the Housing Cup. What was it? Around July 2019, I think it was, somewhere around there, at the regional heats, and then we've obviously kept in touch ever since. So and look at that now, you're emceeing an interview with me in October 2000. No,
Made it. I've
2020.
made it finally. This is my breakthrough.
I know, and I think that's it. Just just know people and just engage with people, and you will see just so many doors open up to you. And then when you're applying for opportunities or you're going for your next job, you can ask people for advice. You can ask people all levels, whether they're a chief exec or an executive director or somebody that's on the same level as you. There's so many more doors to ask, as opposed to maybe just the recruiter that's representing you or one or two other people or friends. So and there you go.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think I'd like to, I think the sector is it's one of the best sectors to do so. It's friendly, it's welcoming, it's open. Maybe because it's the social sector, and everyone wants to, most people are in it to make the world a bit of a better place, and they want to encourage other people to do the same. And when I was doing my job search earlier this year, there were so many people reaching out to me to kind of go, if you need any help, if you need any advice, if you want to chat, because a lot of people are afraid to reach out, especially in busier periods. You think, I'm not important enough. I'm not, people have got more important things to do. And who am I? I'm not going to take their time. And each of those people, from Eileen to Alison to people outside the sector as well, but in the charity sector, do it, because and then pay it back, because that's how the network goes. And I think
two ways, absolutely, pay it back always. Not give and take. I don't help people just to expect help back. That's not the way it works. But karma is a thing, and if you do the right thing by people, then you're helping each other out ultimately as well. The old adage, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, type of thing. So
that was a really positive note to end this interview on, I think.
I think so. Are we doing the wave? I've had this discussion with everybody.
Okay. Yes.
Are you a waver?
I always say awkward wave.
Okay, let's do an awkward wave.
And then awkward wave.
Cool. Gabs, thanks very much for taking time out of your day to MC this interview, as I call it. And yeah, we'll keep in touch anyway, and we'll schedule that beer in for as soon as we're able. But yeah, thank you very much.
No problem at all, John.